Hello everyone, this is Sergi Teja speaking and I'm going to be the new videographer of Samuel Leeds. So I apologize for my English because clearly this is not my first language. So the thing is that I know nothing about property investment, so I'm going to ask Samuel if he can teach me the basics of it, and I'm going to film everything and share the information with you guys.
Financial freedom means that you don't need to work anymore. You don't need to do a job. The basic definition is if you've got properties that are giving you a passive income, like a rent, that covers your basic living essentials, then you're financially free. The best way to achieve financial freedom, in my mind, is through property. Number one, it gives you rent. So if you have properties or control properties, you get a really nice passive income from that. Number two is properties are so exciting because if you own them, they go up in value over time. If you have money in the bank, the money stays the same. If anything, it shrinks because as inflation goes up, the money becomes worth less over time. So investing in property is good because the property value goes up and you get rent. There are different ways you can make money in property. Number one, basic buy-to-let. Buy-to-let means that you buy it to let it out. So it's basically the most simple, straightforward. It just means buy to rent. So you've got money, you put it into a house, you rent it out, that's it. Next is HMO. HMO stands for House of Multiple Occupancy. That's like the house that you live in, which is actually Alistair's house.
Yeah.
You're renting a room, and then there's another room, and another room, and another room, and the landlord or the investor gets all of the rent. It comes down to more rent. That's £350 plus £350 plus, that's £1,400. That's a lot more money than Alistair would get if he just rented it out to one family.
It's not that much.
But if you paid $650 and you moved in, you'd have to pay the bills.
Yeah, of course.
You'd have to get furniture. Whereas for you, you pay $350, you move in, and it's already all up and running.
Yeah.
Because in 2019, convenience sells. For you to go and rent up a whole house, it'll be more expensive, more hassle. So that's why not only is HMOs a really good way to make money, but it's also a really good product because you're actually helping people. Next, rent to rent. Rent to rent is, let's say you find this house, it's owned by Bob. Bob bought the house for maybe £100,000 and it's on the market, he's renting it out for £700 a month. And you say, hey Bob, you're renting your house out for £700 a month. So I'll give you £600 a month, but I just won't charge you anything to manage the house. I'm going to pay all the maintenance, look after the house, you'll have no management fees. You give Bob £600 a month, guaranteed rent. So Bob's happy. But then you rent the house out as a HMO.
Can you do that?
Yes!
So, is it legal? I mean, you can rent a property that you're not the owner.
Yep.
I didn't know that.
Well, you learn something new. So if I rent a house and I pay Bob $600, I rent it for $1,400. I've obviously got costs to pay, but any profit is mine. That is called being an entrepreneur. Next is lease option agreement. That is a cross between a rent to rent and a buy to let, because here's what you do. Let's say you do a rent to rent and you say, look, I'll give you £600 a month guaranteed, but at the end of that contract, 5 years time, I want an option to buy that house.
Like if you do it with a car or something like that.
Yep.
You rent it for a while and then at the end, you buy it.
Boom!
There's that.
Yeah. Like a PCP contract with a car.
Yeah.
Now the great thing about that is if you buy a house now, you have all the benefits now, but you pay for it later in 5 years. From now until 5 years, you've benefited from all the rent. And unlike cars shrink in value, but houses go up. So you've got a fixed price, but then after 5 years, and if it's not worth more, you can have it in the contract that unless it's gone up, you do not have to buy it.
Can you do that?
Yes.
Not bad.
Yeah. So they have to sell it, but you have the option, not the obligation to buy. That's called a lease option agreement. Next, serviced accommodation. You know when you rent a house out with buy to let and you get a very standard rent, HMO, it lifts the rent because you're renting the rooms out. Serviced accommodation is a way of renting a property out and getting maximum rent. And what you do, you can rent your house out and you can put your house, you can list it on Airbnb and booking.com and then people come and they'll stay for 1 night, 2 nights, 2 weeks, but they'll pay, rather than paying £600 a month, they might pay £100 a night. And you can rent houses out that way. You can do something called rent to serviced accommodation, which is when you rent a house, you pay Bobby £600 a month, but then you turn the house into a serviced accommodation house and you keep all the difference. Makes sense?
It makes a lot of sense. Anyway.
Easy peasy. Next, deal packaging. Deal packaging is when you find properties, buy-to-lets, HMOs, rent-to-rents, lease option agreements, service accommodation, any type of property investment that's a good property investment, a good deal. But instead of taking it on yourself, you pass it on to an investor and you charge them a fee. So an average fee might be £3,000. So what people are doing is they're learning about property and they want to invest themselves, but they haven't got too much money. So instead, they're learning about property, they're finding deals, and then they're selling the deals to investors, and then they're making a living off doing that, or more than making a living. They're selling 10 a month, making £30,000 a month, and then that money, they're then using that to reinvest themselves into property. And then there's also a strategy, which is one of my favourites at the moment, which we call BRRR, which stands for Buy, Refurbish, Refinance, Rent. What that means is you buy a house and you normally buy it and it's in really bad condition and it's people don't want it because maybe there's weeds and the toilet's horrible and there's it's just horrible. And then you refurb it. So you make it look beautiful. Maybe you spend £20,000 making it look absolutely fantastic. Then you re-mortgage the house. So you get a new mortgage on the house. And what happens is sometimes, I'll give you an example. If you buy a house for 80,000, you spend 20,000 on it, but then so in total you spent 100,000, but then it's worth 125,000. So you've lifted the value. You get a new mortgage on the property, and you pull back out all that money that you put in. And it's a way of buying houses with no money. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you need money to start with, but you put it in, you add the value, and then you pull the money back out.
So basically, you get all the money from the bank.
Yeah.
And then you pay everything, and then just the money comes back.
Yeah. And then you do it again and again and again. It's a bit like buying and then adding value and then selling at a higher price, but instead of selling, you keep it and you just refinance it. Yeah. So those are the strategies: buy to let, buy, refurbish, refinance, rent, HMOs, rent to rents, lease option agreements, serviced accommodation, deal packaging, and sometimes you can combine strategies.